Kirby, are you in or out on this? Are
Oh.
you wanting some cola chup?
So I think, yes, I am in. I think this is a great marketing stunt. I think the name is awful. Cola Chup, that's just stupid.
Hey-o, Kirby, I'd like you to sing for me. Bye, bye, Miss American Pie.
That's all
Drove
I
a
got.
Chevy to the levee was dry. Them good old boys drinking whiskey and rye, singing this'll be the day that I die. But not as we listen to episode number 156 of the Promo Upfront podcast. Hi there, kids. I'm one of your hosts, Bill Petrie. With me, as always, let's call him the lieutenant of the list, the one and only Kirby Hasseman. Kirby, how the Kashakton are you today?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well. Although I will say, the air quality here in Ohio is pretty dreadful when I woke up this morning. So thanks, Canada. So other than that, I can't go outside because then you can't breathe. But other than that, I'm doing pretty well. How are you, bud?
Good. Much like, Canada bringing bad air down here, most of my family believes the air quality is bad every time I open my mouth and talk. Kind of the same situation going there. No, good. It's hot. It's very, very toasty. It is definitely summer. So, I'm trying not to go outside. I say no to going outside right now, as like you do. And, Kirby, it kind of got me to thinking, I don't know about you, but I love suppliers that say no. Now, that sounds counterintuitive now, doesn't it? Let's face it. One of the hardest things to do, and most companies don't know how to do it, is to say no. But Miles Wadsworth and our friends over at Logan Mats love to say no. No minimums, no art fees, no setup fees. So I don't know about you. Those are a few no's I can really get behind. What about you?
Yeah, anytime that, I think you see so many products and they'll say, oh, it's this much, but then, and it's a one-piece minimum maybe even, and that's great. But if it's $70 and it's a one-piece minimum and it's a $50 setup, well, then it's not $70. It is $120. I think I'm not great at math, but yeah, no setup fees, no minimums. Those are beautiful things.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Kirby. Logo Mats is a truly fantastic supplier of mats, and they are made here right in the USA. This is a perfect time to be talking about them as we approach Independence Day here in the United States. They also have a 100% customer satisfaction guarantee. And that means if anything goes wrong with your order, they're going to replace it or refund it 100% of the time. So distributors, really, it's time to start thinking about mats as one of the most profitable promotional products on the market. The margins are amazing, and they really are. They're off the charts. And it's a super easy add-on to your current customers because they most likely have mats. And why not have those mats be logoed? Hence the name Logo Mats. So why not give I don't want to get all street. I did grow up in the mean streets of Plano, Texas. So why not get some of that mad cheddar, yo? And what that means is, why not get some of that money out there just waiting to be had? Visit them at logomatsllc.com. Now, also, if you email your order to orders@logomatsllc.com and mention this podcast, your friends Kirby and Bill, you're going to get 10% off that total mat order.
Nice.
That's a great deal for the month of July. So for the entire month of July. Plus, if you email them and say, hey, I need a sample kit, they're going to send you one of those too. So email them at orders@logomatsllc.com. I'm not going to be sorry you did. All right, Kirby, I want to thank you for having the courage to do this podcast with me as we approach America's 247th birthday. Two All-American boys on, I believe, America's favorite podcast, according to some research I've read. I can't really reference right now. I believe you have a topic for us that's promotional products related. Gee golly, I wonder what it might be.
Yeah. So as most of us in the branded merch space know, PPAI has come out with their PPAI 100 list. Came out with the 50 suppliers first. just came out with the 50 distributors on the list. We've kind of talked a little bit about the idea behind the list. And so I wanted, and I think this was sort of one of my ideas on discussing the list, is to go over sort of some takeaways we had about the list. And we can go through these fairly quickly if you want. I know we've talked about the PPAI 100, so I don't want to beat it to death, but I think there's some lessons to be learned and some thoughts to be had, and we can kind of go through these fairly quickly if you want. Now, again, in the interest of transparency, we generally don't talk about topics, but again, when we're going to have something that I want to give you the opportunity to think through, I did tell you what we were going to talk about. So we each have some takeaways. We can kind of go, back and forth, I think might make sense.
Let's do the ping and the pong, Kirby.
I love it. Now, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay, love it.
I am raising my hand. All right, so 5 takeaways from the inaugural PPAI 100 list. The first takeaway I had, looking at the entire thing in its entirety. So that's generally what people do when they look at the entire thing in their entirety. So that's me being the redundant man of redundancy. But looking at the list as a whole, it's very clear, to me anyway, that Josh Ellis and his team put a ton of thought and effort to create a new list that combined factors outside of sheer sales volume, which we all know can be fudged, right? We all know that can be fudged, but they really made a point of taking things that aren't 100% revenue based and put that into the equation. And so I have to absolutely applaud the effort and the thinking behind the list. That's my first takeaway.
Okay, cool. Well, it was not my first takeaway. However, it is one of my takeaways. So I'll echo that and say they've clearly put a lot of time and effort and research as a team, not just Josh, but the whole team. And I know you reference that as well. So yes, I think that was cool. I think they spent a lot of time on the front end, which I really like. Now they're spending a lot of time on the back end. Now, the pushback I'd give is this the best use of PPAI's time? That would be a question that I would ask. And that's not a knock. I think creating the list, yes, and utilizing it as a media agency, which they certainly are, that makes sense as well. I think, that they're looking to create bigger and positive change in the industry. And so I think that's good. But, as I look at the level of energy being put into it, I'm like, okay, I certainly hope that there's a bigger play in mind, because if we're using all this energy to put it into a list, I think lists are fun, that, but I'm like, okay, I don't know if it's our best use of time.
Is that one of your takeaways? That
yes.
It's not okay. So I'm going to wrap that in my next one, because it kind of touches on that. So
okay.
I put intent. Now, my number 2 takeaway is intent. I do love how PPAI is seeking to use content data to help member companies elevate themselves. I think that's the idea behind the list. So when you're talking about the energy put behind the list, I believe that's the intention of PPAI, to help member companies elevate themselves, and how that might in turn elevate the industry. Again, looking at some of the factors that went into the determining of the order of the list and who was even on the list, like, there's one good thing. Like, I pulled out one good thing. There's a lot of good things, but the one that came to mind that was really important to me, or I was surprised it wasn't a factor, but pleasantly so, in the fact that there was no mention of pyramid awards, that winning a pyramid award or being awarded one was not a factor. And I'm glad it wasn't a factor, because it's way too subjective. Because I know you love lists. I have a love-hate relationship with them, for sure. But that's and my hate part of it always comes from the subjectivity, and the pyramid awards are a fantastic example of that subjectivity. So I'm glad that wasn't part of it. So do I think, I'm gonna just answer your point, do I think that it's the most intentional or the best use of PPAI's time for that department? I think it's a good use of their time, because I do think they're looking to elevate the industry. Will it elevate the industry? I'm not sure a list does it, but I think there's more at play here that you and I don't see yet. That's my guess.
Okay.
So my next takeaway, though, was size. Size, in my opinion, is still way too important on this list. It was way too important on the list. Bigger isn't always better. You know what's better? Better is better. And that's not to say 4imprint and Halo and Sanmar and SNS aren't doing some amazing things. They are. but lots of smaller guys who are truly innovating tend to get left behind. This is something I touched on about a month ago when we knew this list was happening.
Yep.
And so I didn't see enough of the smaller guys that made sense to me. Plus we already have that list from ASI. So there was still, to me, a little too much reliance on that. We bring in a ton of money for the list. So it didn't, for my, I know the effort is there to differentiate from the ASI top 40 lists. I don't think it differentiated enough. But one thing I did like was I did like the percentage of growth over a 5-year period.
Yeah, I did like that. That's good.
So I did like that. So that was my number 3 C takeaway.
Okay, cool. All right. So I think you jumped me. So this is 2. So this is my
I
second
thought you had
takeaway.
2. I thought yours was it a good use of time? I thought
that was just, that was it. That was
Oh,
one
sorry.
point. No, that's all right.
Oh,
so, yeah. So number 2, so I'm kind of starting on the negative side and I'll push to the positive. So regardless of metrics, every list is just someone's opinion. And so ultimately, though, whether volume was a big piece, whether this was a big piece, blah, 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 every list is just someone's opinion. And I like that, that I like that.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that any list that measures impact and in our industry and doesn't include brand fuel is wrong. Like the idea that brand fuel isn't on the distributor list. Again, I have no affiliation with brand fuel other than Danny's my buddy.
Right.
Like that's it. But the idea that a certified B Corp and like the idea that some of those folks are not on the list, and again, that's why I said it's just someone's opinion. That's not necessarily a knock. This is PPAI's opinion. But you can throw all the metrics at me. I'm going to look at that and go, I literally, when the distributor, I was like, okay, so where's brand fuel? Oh, it's not on it. Oh, well, then the list is flawed. So that's number 2.
Go ahead and get number 3, and then so we can get on the same page.
Yeah, sure. So, okay, so now I would say these get a little bit less specific, but number 3 is there are lots of ways to win in promo. When I look at that list from a 10,000 foot view, you've got online, you've got traditional, you've got marketing agency, you've got sort of old school on the list. And I think I actually, that's one of the things I really loved, because I look at that and go, okay, so as I look at that as a distributor, there are a ton of ways to succeed. And in each of them, regardless, now there were some that had smaller levels of growth, which is the reason I did love that metric about the 3 or 5 year growth or whatever it was.
Right.
But you saw positives across those different platforms. And that's one of the things I love about List is I looked at that and was encouraged to say, regardless of how I decide to do my business, there's a way to succeed.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. So I did have some ranking issues. So that was my 4th takeaway. I'm going to do this one then. Yeah. So 4th takeaway was ranking issues. So on the supplier side, I look, basically there's some missed opportunities here. On the supplier side, the missed opportunity was I didn't like the fact that sub companies that run independently were not measured independently. Ones that come to mind, Evans and Org-Audio, as opposed to HPG as a whole, weren't considered. And I think that's a shame. Even though they are under an umbrella company, they do run for the most part independently. And I think you miss an opportunity there to recognize those companies. And I'd like to see something, looking at all the categories where suppliers are ranked. I'd love to see one. Again, this will be a little bit subjective, but why not assemble a distributor panel and how that supplier helps distributors sell more product? I would love to see that. That to me is important. If I'm a distributor, how is a supplier helping me as a distributor sell merchandise? Are they providing me lifestyle images? Are they providing me a great spec sample program? Are they helping me market to my clients in terms of white labeled marketing materials, whether they're online, digital or non-digital? So I'd like to see that. I think that's a missed opportunity. And again, this is going to be an evolving list. This is year 1. So
yeah, exactly. That's a great point.
Nobody's taking anybody to the woodshed here. It's just, hey, it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback. But, again, as Kirby would say, in the interest of transparency, Josh Ellis shared this list with us, the distributor list, about 5-6 days before it came out. So, they're kind enough to do that. So again, we're Monday morning quarterbacking here. So it's pretty easy. It's a
Yep.
pretty easy job. On the distributor side, the missed opportunities, I think there are a few distributors that are excluded, but I don't understand why. And you mentioned one in Brand Fuel. They've had enormous growth. They've opened up an international office. You have a thought leader a recognized thought leader in Danny Rosen and probably a quiet thought leader in Robert Fivash, who are
Big time.
co-presidents and co-founders of that organization. And they've earned certified B Corp, which is an
Just
incredibly difficult thing to do. And the fact that they're not on the list is weird. And then there are honestly a few distributors who are on the list that kind of invalidates the entire list for me. And I'm not going to call those distributors
yeah.
out, but I just won't. But a few on there are archaic. Sales have been eroding for well over 5 years, and and some of these distributors are borderline irrelevant. And
Right.
again, I'm not trying. You put it on a list, then you're open for judging. So
Yeah.
again, I'm not calling anybody out here. I think there was some. I think the supplier side of this whole thing was a lot stronger than the distributor side and made a lot more sense to me. The distributor side at times felt like, we're going to put this one on the list just so, whoa, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And so it felt, and again, I know there's a lot of thought behind it, but there was a couple on there. I'm like, that makes zero sense to me.
Yeah.
Well, but I'll say one that did make sense, by the way, Something Inked being on there made a ton of sense. They never get recognized because they're not big enough, but they do some really amazing things, and I love that they were on the list. So again, it's that dichotomy, right?
Yeah.
It's some things you love, some things you don't. So do you have a couple more takeaways? Because
Yeah.
I have a whole list. Then I got a whole list of changes, baby. That's my number 5.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what, I'll give you my last 2 real quick, because they're both pretty quick.
Please.
So number 2, number 4, 5, 7, 100,
11.
Yeah, there's business to be had. That's what I keep looking at. But obviously, one of the metrics on here is that the businesses were doing well over, but they weren't just up, man. Like some of these businesses are up. And so again, as a distributor, as a person running a business, okay, there's business to be had. Regardless of the model, you can grow if you go and get it. So that was sort of, to me, I looked at the list, and that was an inspirational piece of it.
Before you go to the next one, that's a great point. I actually really love that. I think you're right. I think when you look at the list and you see the growth for most part, wow, it is very inspirational and aspirational. So I think that's a great point you hit on, Kirby.
Yeah. And final point, and again, these are just like, when I see them, this is what I think of. I say this sometimes, but this list reminds me of it. Our industry is just this big, small town. There's so many people from companies I know and respect and love. And then they're like just like I do when I go to the expo, I'm always like, oh my God, I thought I knew everybody. And then I see a list like this, or I go to the expo, I'm like, I don't know anybody. And so what the best lists like this, and I've said this about the Online 18, the best lists make me go, ooh, I want to learn more about them. I want to connect with them. I want to learn from them. And this list did make me do that. So
yeah,
that's 5.
No, good stuff on the list. Hey, look, again, nothing super negative, but I do have some suggested changes.
Okay.
Just from my perspective. These are not endorsed by Kirby or anybody else.
We'll find out.
By me. Yeah. So if this is for the industry, then include the entire industry. So letter A, lose the industry professional development designation. It's way too PPAI specific. If you are doing this for the entire industry, at least include if they are maybe they're more affiliated with ASI and they have a BASI or a MASI. I think that should be considered as well. But maybe the real way to look at it is instead get some figures from each organization, how much companies are spending on all professional development, both in the industry and out of the industry. Are they encouraging people to take Adobe Photoshop classes? Are they do they have some sort of tuition reimbursement program? To me, that's more important than if they've got a CAS or MAS. To me, that's a lot more important.
Okay.
I don't love the industry faith category at all. I don't. It's too based on Sage, which is a partner of PPAI, which tends to make me raise an eyebrow that there's a little too much in cahoots there. So if
I didn't really get that one either. That was one that I get the intent, and I think I give grace on the intent, but that was one I was like, okay.
So if you're going to do that, then you should include ASI's ratings, as well as Distributor Central's supplier and distributor ratings. If you're going to, again, if this is for the industry, make it for the industry. add a section called collaboration. For years we have focused on competition and not collaboration, and I believe that's really changed. And I'll tell you, a leader with that would be Danny Rosen, whose company's not on the list for some reason. But I'd like to know, how are suppliers collaborating with other suppliers and then with distributors? And on the same side, I'd love to see, how are distributors collaborating with distributors and then with suppliers? And again, I think, you can really have a conversation there and understand, what are they doing there, as opposed to that, because that collaboration, that's what elevates the industry, right?
Yeah, I actually had not thought of that. I think that's a really good point, and it's one of the things I think the industry has evolved. The best companies in the industry have evolved in that, and it's one of the places I think we have room for growth. So I like the concept behind that, because for so long, gosh, I've probably said this before. When I left Halo and got on my own, I'm like, oh my gosh, everybody was in these silos, and you couldn't talk about, like distributors couldn't talk to distributors. And I always thought that was so weird, because there's so much business out there, which this list tells us that, it's okay for us to have lunch. And I think that is something that would elevate the industry. I think that's a good point.
100%. And the last one is, figure out how to include service providers. And I am really getting tired of beating this drum. I got to be honest with you. I'm really getting weary of it. But companies like PromoQue, Promo Pulse, I'll mention a couple I'm affiliated with: Promocations, Brand of 8, historically speaking, Distributor Central, Swag Cycle, Ben Grossman, what he's doing there. Those are the ones that are really shifting how this industry is operating, guys.
Yeah.
And to continually have this separate but equal perspective for service providers is starting to really look bad. History will not be kind to how long it's taken PPAI to figure out a way to include service providers. And it's really starting to get under my skin. I've joked about it for years, and it's kind of always been under my skin. I'm actually at the point now, I'm kind of angry about it. Now, I know they're working on some things. I'm curious to see what those things are. And I'm optimistic. But I got to tell you, I need to start seeing something, because it's really getting to the point where it's almost being purposely excluded, and it's really not, it's not right. Whether me personally or any company I'm affiliated with is involved in anything going forward in terms of a list or being recognized, whatever, that's not what I'm talking about.
Of course,
I'm talking about the companies like condiment and Promo Pulse and Swag Cycle and things like that. It just makes zero sense to me, and it's cheesing me off.
Yep.
All right.
Fair.
It's not cheese. It's not cheesing me off, Kirby. Hey, I got a question for you, Kirby. Are you ready to make a big splash with towels? Not just a splash, but a big splash? I bet you are.
Yeah.
Look no further than Epicolor, exclusively from our pals over at Kanata Towels. Epicolor provides vibrant photorealistic edge-to-edge sublimation, and much like our pals over at Logo Mats, they like to say no minimums, no setup charges, and they've got some deep inventory with products to fit every single price point. So learn more at kanatatowel.com. You're not going to be sorry you did. All right, Kirby, I guess we have now talked about the PPAI 100. Hey, Kirby, I do have another question for you.
Okay.
Is Pepsi best with a hot dog or on a hot dog?
I'm so glad this is on my list of topics. So I if you didn't bring this up today, I was going to bring it up. So yeah, go ahead. I love it.
Well, the soft drink company known as Pepsi is introducing its first ever condiment, Kirby, and obviously you already know this, but maybe our listener doesn't.
Yes.
It's called Pepsi Cola Chup. It's a special sauce that's infused with Pepsi and being launched on July 4th to reinforce the company's belief that hot dogs are best paired with its soda. Now, it actually has a little bit of culinary credibility, Kirby. It was developed with the Culinary Institute of America to, quote, craft a revolutionary new type of condiment enhanced with the rich caramel notes and citrusy pop of Pepsi Cola. So basically how they do it, they begin with a Pepsi reduction, and then they infuse it with smoked tomatoes, a blend of spices, including cinnamon, thyme, oregano, and paprika, depending on how you want to pronounce it.
I like paprika.
And then plus, I don't know, paprika, plus onions and ketchup. And the result is a sweet citrusy taste of a crisp tasting Pepsi created to bring out the spicy flavor notes of a tube steak. All right, Kirby. So it's a limited edition. It's available only on one day, on July 4th, on Independence Day here in the United States, at 4 United States ballparks: Yankee Stadium, where the Arizona Diamondbacks play, where Target Field, where the Minnesota Twins play, and Comerica Park, where the Detroit Tigers play. Kirby, are you in or out on this? Are you wanting some cola chup?
So I think, yes, I am in. I think this is a great marketing stunt. I think that the idea, of course, it's a limited edition. Of course, it's just for July 4th. I think the name is awful. That cola chup, that's just stupid. And like the idea that they didn't have a group of creative people that were able to come up with something that's a little bit better on that's a little eyebrow raising. But other than that, I think it's fun. I think this is one of those things that, now, honestly, the idea that it's only available one day, love it. The idea that it's not available in grocery stores, I feel like is a missed opportunity, because I mean, I could totally see me going, oh, I'll pick that up just for a grill out situation. So yeah, I love it.
Wrong. That is a terrible idea. And I think, again, stay in your lane. We talk about staying in your lane. This is not staying in your lane. So I'm calling you out, Kirby. But I do think one thing you did say was right. The name is terrible, cola chup. It reminds me, just because you call something a chup, put that on the end of something, does not make it a condiment. That's like anything with a palooza does not mean it's always fun either. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's lazy marketing there. I don't, just because this file for me, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. And so to me, it's way outside the line. And again, if you're going to do it, go all in. To me, it feels like, oh, let's make a big splash, but really no one can ever try it. And to me, that means it's crap. And here's the thing, I already know it's terrible. Haven't even had it, don't need to have it. You want to know why I know it's terrible? Because it's made with that swill known as Pepsi Cola. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's awful. Their logo's bad. They're number 2 for a reason, because it tastes like number 2. All right, Kirby.
No.
So I'm out. You're in. I'm out.
Yeah, and I would say see, this is I totally disagree. This is one of those things where Coca-Cola is too stodgy to do something like this. Pepsi is much more fun as a brand, and so of course they would try something different.
Historically speaking, I think you're right, but I think what Coke has done, and I don't think it's been very successful, but every about 3 months they come out with a mystery flavor. They call it like Starship Supreme or whatever. I just saw a new one out in the store. That's staying in their lane. It's a mystery flavor, and it's available, but it's staying in their lane. I think historically you're right. Coca-Cola has been the stalwart, and stodgy's probably a fair word for it. And Pepsi has always tried to cater to the Pepsi generation, as it were, right?
Yeah.
But again, your mileage may vary. There's some things that Pepsi has done so well marketing to the youth, and they've done some things so poorly because it's all over the place. I always have felt Pepsi's marketing has been all over the place, and this just serves to reinforce that to me.
Yeah, to me, the mistake is just like, okay, if you're gonna do it, and you said this, if you're gonna do it, go all in. I would totally try a small bottle of this for a barbecue on July 4th. I would never do it again, I'm sure. But would that then get me thinking about the brand of Pepsi? Yeah, I think it would. And you'd be getting me thinking about it in a place where I could actually buy it in a grocery store. So that's the part that I think they missed.
Well, and they've missed, and another way they could do it is, I think Burger King generally is aligned with Pepsi, I believe. I don't go to Burger King, but why not create little ketchup packets that for a week you get those?
Love that.
There should be a way for normal yuck monkeys like you and I to get it if we want to. And back to the Coca-Cola thing, they have been stodgy, but they've loosened that. They are now, you can actually buy Jack and Coke in a can. It's not Jack and Cola. So I think that's shifting. But it's an interesting idea by Pepsi. I'm sure it's terrible. I'm sure it'd be terrible with any cola. Well, maybe not. Dr. Pepper barbecue sauce is really good, but
absolutely not. But
okay. All right, Kirby. I believe it's your turn.
So we'll do this one quick.
We're up against it.
Yeah, we're up against it, but we'll do this one quick. So our study, this is the quote that comes out of this. Our study points to a casual link between habitual napping and larger total brain volume.
Okay.
So essentially, there was a study done where compared people age 40 to 69 who are genetically predisposed to taking naps versus people who weren't. And the researchers found that nappers had bigger brains. And so I thought this was just a fun headline. There obviously is, I'm sure there's not a lot of double-blind studies on this, but the idea that if you take naps on a regular basis, that it might actually increase your brain volume. It didn't say they were smarter, by the way. They just said that they had bigger brains. It makes me wonder if I should start working brain fueling napping into my daily productivity. What say you, Bill?
I wish I was able to take naps more. Obviously, the older I get, the easier it is to take the afternoon nap occasionally.
Yeah.
During the work week, though, I don't generally get that done. I would like to. And there are times where I'm really stressed, really busy, and I'll say, I'm carving 30 minutes out. I'm just going to lay down and shut my eyes. And that does work. But my brain tends to go a million miles an hour, for better or for worse. And so napping is generally difficult for me during the week, but I think there are benefits to it. I absolutely believe it leads to more brain power, more brain productivity.
Yeah, I just thought it was a fun study that it actually made your brain bigger. I'm not sure how that works, but I thought it was fun. So that was it. Quick topic there.
All right, one last quick topic. Take 48 seconds. Are you sad you're missing the PromoQue this Friday?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. I am sad that I'm missing it. I'm going to have promo FOMO for sure. I love what you guys are doing over there at Promocations. And so I'm sure there'll be lots of video, lots of pictures. Keep me posted and drink lots of water, my friend.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be hot. It's going to be about 100 degrees in Nashville with about 110, 115 heat index. We're going to have plenty of water and plenty of other liquids, but mostly water out there, and a lot of good food. We rented out an entire compound. It's a tiny home village.
Be so cool.
Six tiny homes. So we're looking forward to it. And we're going to miss you there, Kirby, for sure. But you know what? You had to say no. And I understand that. And you know what? Sometimes no makes a lot of sense. Like when Logo Mats tells you no minimums, no art fees, and no setup fees. Those no's make a hell of a lot more sense than you saying no to coming to the PromoQue, but that's okay. So again, we're big fans of Logo Mats. Miles Wadsworth and his team, all their stuff is made right here in the United States of America. And what better way to celebrate America's 247th birthday than by getting in touch with our friends over at Logo Mats by emailing them orders@logomatsllc.com. You mentioned the podcast, you're going to get 10% off your entire mat order for the month of July. That's amazing, right? Yeah. And if you need a sample kit, they're going to happy to send one out to you. Just email them again at orders@logomatsllc.com.
Bigger the order, the more you save.
Hey, that's right. In fact, you're making more mad cheddar, yo. So hit them up. Let's go.
That's right.